Good morning, my name is Samantha Oliva and I'm going to explain my lesson plan number 3. The topic of this class is passive voice. The grade I'm going to teach is first year of senior high school. The duration of the class is 45 minutes. The proficiency level is B2 and I am the lesson plan designer. Okay, I'm going to share with you the objectives of this class. Listening, the students will know the construction of the passive voice. Speaking, students will be able to create a sentence from active voice to passive voice and vice versa. Reading, students will write sentences in the passive voice. In writing, the student will explain the use of the correct voice in appropriate situations. The methodology I'm going to use in this class is direct method and communicative method. Strategies, the creation of sentences, individual work, and cooperative work. Okay, the anticipatory set of this class is I will introduce the passive voice to the students. I will use the board and begin by transforming an example. Active sentence into its passive equivalent. Next, some variants of the statement in different verb tenses will be proposed. Okay, and finally, I will explain the functional uses of the passive voice. Now we have the main teaching input. Students will write an imaginary news story. It should contain at least 5 examples of the passive voice and be in an assigned tense. They will do this in groups of 3 or 4, and each group one news story and 1 verb tense. Okay, each group will use 1 verb tense. The modeling part. All the examples and activities that we will do in class and the answers that the students will give will provide clear models which will show them the correct form and use in the context so that they can use it in the future. Okay, guided practice. For this activity, in groups of 2 or 3, the students will work together to define a description of a process such as a recipe, steps for a facial cleaning. Each group will work on a different activity. And it's important to emphasize that they must use the passive voice. Independent practice. This activity is a writing activity. Okay, students will work individually to make passive statements from active sentences. I will put some active sentences on the board and the students will modify them to use the passive voice. Here I have the examples. Okay, and when they have finished, they can compare their answers with those of a partner. The assessment part. I will write on the board the vocabulary that I think they may need. Students should use the passive voice as much as possible by forming sentences. And they will not have to write them, just stand up and say the sentence. And for closing review and a follow-up, finally, they can ask questions if there is something that is not clear. And their task will be to create a story using the passive voice. Okay, so I'm going to start the class now. Okay, welcome to this class. The topic of this class is passive voice. Okay, passive voice. And what's the meaning of passive voice? A verb is in the passive voice when the subject of the sentence is acted on by the verb. Okay, for example, the ball was thrown by the pitcher. The ball, in this case, is the subject, receives the action of the verb. Okay, and was thrown is in the passive voice. So I'm going to show you some examples. Okay, a more detailed example. Here I have Eric stole the car. We have here Eric and car. Okay, the active. Here we have the active voice, that is the person or thing, Eric, and performs the action, the verb. Okay, so in the passive voice we have the car, we use this part, the car was stolen by Eric. Okay, and now the object becomes the subject. The object here, that was the car, becomes the subject here. Okay. Now we're going to start with an activity, and you're going to write an imaginary news story. Okay, you can look the examples, and your story should contain at least 5 examples of passive voice. Okay, you can write this story in past simple. Okay, and you're going to do this in 3 groups. Okay, in groups of 3 students, sorry, and you're going to construct this story. Okay, remember using passive voice. You can ask me something if you don't remember. Okay, you can look the example in the board. Okay, so I want you to tell me or read the story you created. Okay, one student of each group is going to come here and to read us your story. Okay, and we're going to analyze if you use the passive voice. Okay. Now, we're going to, in the same groups, we're going to define a description of a process, such as recipe or steps for a facial cleaning, okay? Each group will work on a different activity, okay? And you have to emphasize the use of passive voice. You can underline, okay? I'm going to give you an example of a recipe of a chocolate cake, okay? Here I used passive voice. The eggs, sugar, and butter are beaten together. The flour, cocoa, baking powder, and salt are added to the egg mixture. Next, the milk is poured in and all the ingredients are mixed. Finally, it is baked for 45 minutes in a moderate oven. Okay, so you can replicate a recipe or a different description of something. Okay. Remember to underline the passive voice. And then you're going to share with us your description of your recipe. Okay, if you finish, you can share with us someone who wants to share the recipe. Okay, very good. Now we're going to continue with a writing activity. You're going to work individually, and you're going to make passive statements from active statements. Okay, here I'm going to put some active statements on the board, and you're going to modify them, okay, and put it in passive voice. Okay, so here you have the sentences you have to transform. Okay, sentence number 1 is many people watch the game on television. Number 2, Mauricio has fixed the broken wall. Number 3, every summer the Olivas family sends their son to camp for 4 days. And number 4, I go to exercise every day. Okay, so when you have finished, you can compare your answers with a partner. Okay, and then we're going to review all the class we were going to. Okay, if you finish, I can erase the sentences on the board, and now we're gonna review them. Very good. Okay, now I'm going to put here some verbs. Okay, here I have some verbs, and you are going to create a sentence. Okay, you don't have to write it. You're going only to stand up and say the sentence using one of these words or verbs. Okay, so I'm going to call you one by one. You're going to stand up and form the sentence, okay? Okay, thank you very much for completing this activity. You did very well. And finally, you can ask questions if there's something that's not clear. You can ask me some questions, okay? And you're going to do your homework that will be to create a story using the passive voice. Okay, it could be a short story, and remember using the passive voice and underline it. Okay, so thank you very much for being in the class. Remember, you can ask me something if it's not clear, something. Okay, and remember that a verb is in the passive voice when the subject of the sentence is acted on by the verb. Okay, if you want more examples, okay, I'm going to put here some examples at the end of the class so you can remember for your homework. Okay, so thank you very much for being in the class, and I will see you the next class. Okay, bye.